Welcome to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and during this series, I'll be interviewing various thought leaders, wellness experts, and humans on how they practice sustainable self-care and mindfulness. We'll get real and raw, talk about the light and the shadow side of self-care and mindfulness, and how we can actually stay centered amid the chaos and the hustle and bustle of our modern day world. So settle in and get centered. This podcast episode is brought to you by Centered in the City, a virtual on-demand self-care and mindfulness platform with different meditations, journaling prompts, nourishing recipes, and Pilates flows, all designed to support you feeling calm, focused, and energized as you live your life in this modern day world. For more information, head on over to centeredinthecity.com. Welcome back to the Centered in the City podcast. I am so glad you are here. My name is Wade Brill, and I am your host. Today, we have a really exciting conversation with Dave Conway, and we are talking about the power and practice of manifestation, which I feel like is a very hot topic recently. At least it's flooding my Instagram and social media feeds. So I'm really excited to have Dave on to talk about what it is, the process, the mindset we need to hold around it. Does this shit actually work? So a little bit about Dave. He is the founder of Conway Consulting, and he helps people discover the power within their minds to turn that power into results unlike they've ever seen and experienced before. Dave is driven by a desire to empower people to show them how powerful they really are. He contributes regularly to Forbes and Entrepreneur.com. You can check out Dave's full bio and link to his website in the show notes. Let's settle in for this insightful conversation and let's get centered. Dave, welcome to the Centered in the City podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
How would you describe what it means to be centered?
Oh, that's a good question. I think being centered is knowing who you are, and where you're going, which I think is rare in this world. I don't think people really know who they are, like what it really means to be a human. You know, that you're a spiritual being, you have an intellect, and you live in a physical body. I don't think many people know that, or I don't think many people know their rights, like the power of their thought, their rights that they can think and feel how they choose, that they can self-direct, they can take control of their own mind. I don't think people know that. So I think that's why there's so much disorder.
What do you feel like people's default is?
Depends on the person, but I guess, anger, confusion, frustration, gossip, lostness, if that's a word, lostness.
Yeah, I like it. Let's take it. Yeah.
Just now we got it.
Yeah, those are, and very similar in Buddhist thought around all these hindrances. It sounds like that take us off of our center. So knowing who we are, being connected to our bodies, being connected to our spirit, being connected to our thoughts, that we can take charge of our life brings us back to center, I'm hearing.
Yeah, I don't think the spirit part changes. I think that's like perfect. Your intellect can change. Your body definitely changes. I'm 40 now. If we start to understand that there's a universal side of our nature that is constant and always wants to express, I like to think I think a lot of people strip stuff away and they can find that serenity. However, I'm of a little bit of a different brand. I like to see how far I can go, how fast you can take something and remain calm the entire way. So to push the limits, push out of your comfort zone, but find comfort as you grow. Because I think a lot of people, as they start to focus up on being centered, I think some of them stop growing actually and serving.
I've been exploring this question. I'm curious, in your perspective, do you feel like it has to be hard to grow? Like, do you have to challenge yourself to grow?
I think you have to challenge your thinking. Yeah. I think you have to challenge your thinking. Like, dissatisfaction is a creative state. So whatever changes a person has in their life are generally brought about by dissatisfaction. Only when something becomes unacceptable in our life do we move away from that thing, and that's the only time our life changes. If something remains acceptable, it'll just keep flowing in.
And how do people gain, in your experience, insight that they're dissatisfied? Because I think that's a really, what I've seen in my line of work too, is like people don't want to reach out for support or want to change or realize, oh, I can design my life until something happens. And when I say something happens, meaning like a health diagnosis that they're like, oh shit, I'm not invincible, or a breakup, or, a big job change or a loss in their life that kind of wakes them up. What for you shows up around this, in your experience, this dissatisfied wake up call, so to say?
Well, I think dissatisfaction is a good thing. I think it comes from like the creator, and it's the creator, telling us to run faster, jump higher, reach further. The issue with that is that we think that we're the ones that have to run faster, jump higher, and reach further. What we need to understand is that there's a power that will bring us to those places. So I think what we really need to do is we want to learn how to relax and relax into the ideas as they come. Some ideas can go, we'd be very wise to let 99% of them probably go through, especially if they're coming from other people. Depends on your environment as well, I guess. But to relax into every idea, I think, is what we want to find. We want to find, serenity as we grow, serenity as we expand, because we're the only creature in nature that truly struggles. Like if you go outside and you put your ear up against a little blade of grass, and you're like, hey, little blade of grass, how are you doing today? It's not gonna be like, oh, the hell, man, like, oh, today's just a today just like tough today, and then it's like, oh, and this blade of grass beside me is taller than me, and now I feel terrible, and then this other one is shorter than me, so that makes me feel better, and that's nothing in nature is struggling. Nothing. We're the ones that struggle. We introduce the whole thing into it. We got to learn how to relax into the laws. We got to learn how to relax into understanding. We got to learn how to relax into the ideas, and know that there's a power that'll back you up. Same power that's backing up the trees and the birds and the sun and the moon and the entire thing is the same power that we can have too.
I love this. So talk to us about, before we get into like the juiciness of manifestation and the laws of manifestation, tell us a little bit of how you got into this world. Like, what was your opening to understanding manifestation, to tasting it yourself, to even just learning about it?
Yeah, fantastic. So my whole life, I've always knew there was like something else going on. Like I didn't see color or anything like that. I'm not like gifted in that way. But I remember the first time I heard about the term like a woman's intuition. And I was like, oh, I think I have one of those. I think I have one of those. I have an intuition. I think I got one. Anyway, my whole life, I always could feel, like I could just feel things. And I knew that there was always something else behind what you actually see. And I had a suspicion. Now, I was very ignorant, never had any education in the art of manifesting or anything like that, or even any information on it at all. But I always had a feeling that like what I was witnessing was like secondary, like the eyes were experiencing were the secondary place for experience. So because of that, my mom, there's this gentleman in town in my city. I was 18, and I don't remember if she forced me to go or pulled me by the ear and dragged me. I don't really know. But there's a man, it was the first, last, and only time he ever came to our city. And I went, there was at the Travel Hotel in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. If you say that 10 times fast, your tongue is tied in a knot forever. And I never had anybody speak like that. This guy talked for 2 hours, had me captivated the whole time. And I remember he put this slide up on the screen, and there was a little yellow dot. And he said, let this dot represent your level of awareness. And he's like, your level of awareness is producing every result in your life. And at the time, I was selling snowboards at a place called West 49. And I was making $1,000 a month, 18 years old. And he said, what would happen if your level awareness doubled? So the little yellow dot grew twice as large. And I was like, ooh, oh, I'd be making 2,000 a month, you know? And he said, what would happen if it doubled again? And then the yellow dot doubled again. And I was like, oh my God, 4,000. And he said, and if it doubled again, and then it went bigger, this yellow dot. And I was like, 8,000. And I was like, oh, I think I almost passed out, you know? I was like, that's almost too much. And then he ended up filling, excuse me, he ended up filling the whole screen in yellow. And he said, but the truth is you're always here, and then shrunk it right back to a little yellow dot. I was 18 years old. So that's 22 years ago. I'm 40 now. That was 20. And I still remember that. Like I remember where I was sitting. That piece of information changed my life. Well, that man's name was Bob Proctor. And so Bob Proctor was my first introduction into the mind, into the role it's playing in our life, into that we can truly manifest what we desire. I think there's a lot of people in the world that teach manifestation along the lines of like something for nothing. And I think that's a farce. It's not something for nothing, it's something for everything. You know, if we're going to start to change our life, we have to let go of the life we have. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. You know, in my experience, I say this as much as possible. True manifestation is manifesting a new version of yourself. Because I believe that every human being on the planet, that there is a person inside of you that will naturally, and the key word there is naturally, produce the life that you desire to live. So you just have to find out more about that version of yourself. And you also have to find out more about the version of who you are and start what I call pruning. Just start pruning. If for things to grow, for plants to grow, they need to be pruned. And we're the same. We are governed by all these same principles. So when I found out about mindset manifestation, I went at it for like 15 years, and I never manifested anything. I never produced very much because I was missing some fundamental pieces. I was missing ideas around the paradigm. I was missing ideas around the role the imagination is playing as a bona fide power in the world. And I was missing a piece of information called the self-image.
Okay, before we go into all of those laws of manifestation, I want to just highlight it sounds like you had a very expander mindset when you saw Bob speak. And so it sounds like it opened up your mind of what's possible. It started to expand your mind of what's possible. And when you talk about knowing the self, easing back into the self, yet this idea of pruning, and then you notice there's this pattern that a lot of people don't want to let go. They don't want to shed their former lives. Why do you think that is? Like, what are they holding on to?
Well, if we're going to talk about, like, I think we want to understand what a paradigm is. Now, the word paradigm, there might be some of your audience would maybe call it conditioning, belief system. But what a paradigm is a multitude of habits or ideas, because the habit is nothing more than an expression of an idea that's fixed in your subconscious mind or your unconscious mind. So this is a part of your mind that beats your heart. It's a part of the mind that digests your food. Basically, everything that isn't the conscious mind in the universe is the subconscious mind, because it all happens by law without any human being's interference, without anyone trying to, pump up. Imagine like pumping up a tire. Like this part does not need any pumping. It pumps itself. It's quite mind-boggling. So when people are afraid to change or unwilling to change, I think the key word is willingness. Do you want it? Like, do you really want to change? And I remember one time I had a client that was asking me, well, Dave, how do I know that I have a goal? Like, I have a goal intellectually. I know what I want in life. And that doesn't take long for a person to figure out. Your audience could sit down for the next hour, grab a pen and paper, write at the top of the paper, what do I really want? And a bunch of wants will come out. They're in there. You want stuff. That's all your conscious mind does. So she asked me, how do I know I have a goal? And I said, is it changing your behavior? Is it changing how you are operating, how you're thinking, how you're feeling? Now, when it comes to the paradigm, I don't know why it doesn't want to let go. Maybe everything in the universe just likes to survive. I don't know. Is it an entity on itself? I'm not too sure about that. But I just think things like to stay as they are. Like that I don't know why we're programmed this way. Like a tree
Mm.
doesn't turn into a blade of grass until it disintegrates and returns back to the soil, and then it can be recreated as a blade of grass. You're out in Seattle, so you got lots of trees around there, so I'm sure you see it. When a tree falls down and then it returns back, right? It turns back into soil. It's just
It
beautiful, and then it can come
decomposes, yeah. Hmm.
exactly, and then it's reformed, and that's like us. We're the same. So let's say we're a tree and we're producing acorns and we're become dissatisfied with the acorns. Well, what we need to do is we need to disintegrate. Like we can't be a tree that produces acorns, and we can't be a tree and that's going to produce raspberries. You have to be a raspberry bush to produce raspberries. So we need to decompose. We need to basically not be a tree anymore and regrow into a raspberry bush. And we're the only creatures on the planet that have this power. We're the only ones that can do it.
Okay, beautiful. So now that if our goals, from what I'm hearing, if our goals are, X, Y, and Z, want to write a book, we want to go travel the world, we want to make over $1 million a year, what is it that people need to then become? Like, what are some of the laws of manifestation that people need to embody and practice? It sounds like in order to transition from that acorn tree to that raspberry bush that's going to produce those goals, if I'm
So,
understanding the link correctly.
yeah, so these wouldn't be the laws. I guess they could be a process. I can speak of the initial process, and I can speak of why manifestation doesn't work for a lot of people too. I can answer that question as well. Um, so the first step is you want to get a goal. Now, what we need to understand is that there's a big difference between a want and a goal. So, what is a goal? Well, a goal is nothing more than an idea. That's it. So, thoughts come into our conscious mind in the form of ideas. Now, we don't exclusively um, want all ideas that flow into our head. So, if you ask me today, hey, Dave, do you want to, go dye your hair pink tonight? I'd be like, well, tempting, but no, not into it. Uh, if I said to you, hey, do you want to go, go base jumping? And you're like, oh, that's cool, but no, I'm good. So we don't always have to accept an idea. An idea turns into a want when you actually want the idea. Then that want needs to turn into a goal. That's where you consciously select it and you say, you know what? I want to move this from a thought in my head into my life. That want, as it turns into a goal, it needs to convert again. It needs to convert into a desire. What is a desire? A desire is an emotionalized want. That's a want that has gone into your subconscious or your emotional mind. So it starts to change your behavior. And what people want to understand is that a desire is the only thing that'll do battle with a paradigm. Where is the paradigm? I said it earlier, your paradigm's in your subconscious. Now, a lot of times that paradigm, that existing conditioning, and everyone, here's an example, like who here has bought a gym membership and you're going to go every morning at 5 a.m. or whatever the heck, and you get there 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, and then you never go again, right? I think it's something like 70% of gym memberships aren't used. Well, why is that? Because you had the desire initially, and then your flipping paradigm kicked in and it killed it. So your paradigm is a desire. It will kill off the intruder, the different way of life. So that desire needs to turn into an obsession. Once that sucker turns into an obsession, it will manifest.
And what does an obsession look like for those that kind of can't wrap their head around? Because, like, even when I hear obsession, I think of like kind of addiction, something that feels kind of
That's a form.
unhealthy is kind of where so I'm curious, like, it doesn't feel balanced, which is very much where
It's
like I
not.
rest. Yeah. So talk to us. What is like an obsession? How does that translate?
Well, another word maybe for the audience, if I like the word obsession because I think it's accurate. I don't think obsession's a bad word. I think we need to become obsessed with good stuff. I have a suspicion that you're obsessed with being centered and things like this. I have a feeling you're obsessed with it. That's why you're producing it. You see, in the beginning, desires, they can go in and out, but obsessions, they take control of you. So we could call an obsession a burning desire, where like you can feel it, like you can feel it in your blood. It's like the idea now is running you. Like you can't really stop. It's like I want this. I love this. I love doing this. Some people are obsessed with soccer. Some people are obsessed with football. Some people are obsessed with ballet. Like we all have obsessions. It's just ideas that are running in our paradigm. So as we start to think and emotionalize the idea over and over as it becomes an obsession or a burning desire, then it's going to manifest in the world. So the first thing we want to do is you want to get a goal. Consciously select. You have a right to do this as a human being. You've been endowed with this power. You can choose how you're going to live. So you pick a goal, something that your current life, is worth trading for. So it's like, imagine you're an oak tree and you're like, you know what? I'm going to become a raspberry bush. I think life's better as a raspberry bush. And you're like, I'm going to do it. And then you disintegrate and then you recreate. So first you get a goal. After you get a goal, you build a clear mental picture. So this is what I missed for 15 years. This is what I miss. I missed the imagination. Napoleon Hill said the imagination is the most marvelous, miraculous, inconceivably powerful force the world has ever known. The most marvelous, miraculous, inconceivably powerful force the world's ever known. And you have one. Every human being on the planet has one. Every human being that is alive in this world has come over to this plane of life with the greatest gift, an imagination, a mind. So first you get the goal, then you build a clear mental picture. What would be an image where that desire that you have, that goal, would be complete? Now you're fabricating this whole thing. Once you get that image, then you ask yourself, who is the man, woman, or person that is naturally producing that? So once again, we'll use the acorn raspberry bush idea. So here you are, you're an acorn, you're an oak tree and you're producing acorns. And you're like, I want to produce raspberries. Now you could work for 15 years like I did, remaining an oak tree and trying to produce raspberries. You ain't never going to do it. So start to look.
When you say find the man, woman, person who's doing it, right? Who's becoming that raspberry bush, is that to be like an expander, so to say, to be somebody that's like, oh, this is possible, that this is out there?
You can do it right through mimicry. You can do it through your intellect. Like, what is an expander? You'll have to tell me what that is.
Expander is a term I've heard in the manifestation world of like somebody who's out there. So for instance, if I am trying to manifest my perfect partner, right? This idea of a person I want to marry or be with. I'm already married, but
Oh yeah,
if I'm
me too.
my friend's husband has these qualities that I'm looking for in my future husband. So like he's a expander of what's possible. Like there is a man out there who is kind and successful and nurturing and handy and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Quite
becomes like, oh,
stereotypical.
my mind can taste it, right? So it knows it's out there
Yeah,
versus it being kind of this like, oh, am I creating this like fallacy am I creating this kind of like Barbie
like
land, in my mind?
like conjuring.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you can do it like through observation. So I guess so. Like, let's say you're the oak tree, and in my life, I was an oak tree for 15 years trying to produce raspberries, and I was working like a dog to try and do it. I thought force would do it, and I almost killed myself, trying to create success. And I lived like that for 15 years. At the end, I was very angry, broke spiritually, broke mentally, physically, and financially. Like I was in rough shape. Um, what you do is you do it through observation. So let's say you do want to produce a raspberry, then you need to go and look at raspberry bushes. You need to go say, well, what are they? How do they operate? How do they grow? What do they do? How do they behave? And then you need to die. At my events on the second night, because I think I might run some of the greatest manifestation events in the world. On the second night, we have a wake. I know this sounds a little morbid, but we have a wake, and we celebrate the person like that came, who they were, and but they got to go. It's like TTYN, girl, like peace, talk to you never, like you got to go, girl, and this is how my life changed too.
Mm.
So once you build that clear mental picture of that situation or circumstance that would reflect it being achieved, then you ask yourself, who's the man, woman, or person that's producing it? And then that's the great joy, and that's the adventure. And when you discover your own inadequacies, I think the human race has a terrible habit of beating themselves up. I think we treat ourselves terrible. I did a post on Instagram where I said, why is there so much hate in the world? Well, there's so much hate in the world because there's so much hate in people's hearts. It's so obvious. There's so much anger.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the most important pieces in my work of the practice around self-care, because when we can give to ourselves and nurture, not just like, I'm not talking about like face masks and shit, I'm talking about like really nurture that inner voice, how when we can be more loving to self, that's also where we can be more loving to others. But it really does start with a lot of our own internal dialogue.
Big time. It's all it's I'm right now, as you say that, if your audience wants to pick this up, they could. So right now, literally right beside this, what I'm studying right now, it's called The Coin of Heaven, by Neville Goddard. And then this is the book. It's from a book called Power of Awareness. This is probably one of the greatest manifestation books ever written. And it's called The Coin of Heaven. And your audience should pick it up. And it comes from, Coin of Heaven comes from Awakened Imagination is the book it comes from. It's a chapter in there. And I'll study this for 3 months straight, every day.
Mm. And for you, what are you studying? What give us a little more detail about what the coin of heaven is?
So yeah, you asked, it's about inner dialogue, how you talk to yourself. So the coin of heaven is thought. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life is take control of your thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you practice taking control of your thoughts?
Time. It takes time. So I will sit. So I guess I'll meditate. When I meditate, I'm going into no thought though. That's the objective there. I don't got to go to happy hour anymore to stop my thinking. I can go and meditate, which is nice. And then miracles start to happen in your life because you settle your nervous system down. But sitting, like I've got this lazy boy in my studio now, and I can be in there for 2-3 hours a day, no problem. Thinking, sitting, building images in my mind, studying, taking inventory, reflecting. There's so many different forms of manifest. There's so many different ways to influence the mind. You can do it through visualization. You can do it through written. You can do it through audible affirmations, or you really like go Tony Robbins style and charge it up or whatever. Priming, I think he calls it. These are all bona fide ways to shift the consciousness. And we got to understand that we're not attacking ourselves, we're attacking the paradigm. Like it's just got to go. Because if it doesn't go, your life is not changing.
Is it when you say this, for instance, on the second night of your events, the paradigm, is it part of like an ego death, would you describe it as, or is it something completely different?
No, it's different. So it's the true manifestation and quantum leaps lie in letting go. And if we're going to create a different life, we just have to let go of the person that's producing our current one. You see, I used to try and change results from the outside, not understanding that it was my state of mind that produced the results. This is why people run around all the time trying to change results all the time. They're working way too hard, like way too hard. I'm telling you right now, people are working way too hard at getting what they want. I work a lot less creating an amazing life than I used to creating a not that great one. So what we want to grasp is that it's the state of mind that is going to alter your life. So every day we need to find that state of mind that produces the results. Remember that state of mind. If any of your audience is thinking about or going to the gym or doing that or whatever, it's your state of mind that got you there those 3 days. And it's your state of mind that kept you away for the next 11 months. It's your state of mind that does this. It's your state of mind that is controlling your eating. It's your state of mind that's controlling your sleeping. And what do people do? They try and change they'll take a pill, they'll do stuff, they'll do crazy stuff. We're getting crazy with the stuff that we're doing. Anything but changing yourself. Anything but just sitting down. Because why? We were never taught. I remember when I really started getting into visualization, I was in the studio and my mother-in-law was there, and she came in and she hit me with the door. Like I was lying on the ground and I was visualizing, and she bumped with the door. She said, "Oh my God, what are you doing down there?" And I said, "I'm working. I'm doing the most important work of the day. I'm doing the most important." People do not stop to think. People confuse mental activity with thinking. That is not thinking. And the truth is, human beings don't have to think, because the subconscious mind propels them all through life anyway. It's like when you used to learn how to drive a car. You're all hands, feet, you're consciously doing it. And then eventually now you can be smoking a cigarette, having a coffee, driving with your knee, and doing your makeup. It's all automatic. People do not have to think, and most people don't.
I'm curious to tie in emotions here, because you mentioned this piece of, going to the gym. It's all mental, right? It's all of our mindset. However, people get so trapped by their emotions, right? Like I'm feeling lazy, I'm feeling tired. As you mentioned around manifestation, that it's really about connecting to our desires, to our emotion, to create that fire within us to then create change, to create different patterns. So if we went deeper to the root, because sometimes it's not just change our mind, and we got it because we kind of got to go deeper. What do you recommend for people there to support them going deeper so that they can step into this place of ease, relaxation, to then let their subconscious take over?
When we talk about emotions, we want to understand that your mindset is your emotions. Your state of mind is your feelings and your thoughts. We want to grasp, I think it'd be great for more people to know this, that your emotional state is stemming from thoughts that are fixed in there. So if a person has a trauma, and no one gets out alive, everybody has these things, these experiences in life, they get fixed in there, and they actually get fixed right in the nervous system. And what they do is they just perpetuate, they keep expressing themselves. So when we have these negative experiences, what occurs is they shape our perception of the world in which we live. Can we trust it? We might, there's a lot of people that are moving away from religions because they had an experience there, or they heard someone else had one. So then that distorts that. So they shape our perception of our world, and then they shape our perception of ourselves. But I said at the beginning of the podcast that your spirit is perfect. So the mind can change. The spirit is constant. It's perfect. So there is perfection inside of every human being. If you want to change, there is no get out of jail free card. You have to consciously, through repetition, sit your butt down and do it. Like there's just no other way around it. I think we're going.
I'm smiling because I love the emphasis on sitting and stillness and connecting inwards to live more intentionally and powerfully outwards, because we, as you said earlier, get it so wrong of let's make ourselves busier, let's do more, because then we think that will produce more.
Yeah, exactly. We think we have to we think we have to be so active, and we do have to be active, but we could be naturally active. Like, so people think that sitting in a chair and visualizing or reading or whatever is like you're doing nothing. No, you are doing that. That is an activity, right? If you're sleeping, that is an activity. That's not doing nothing. You're always doing something. It just depends on what value you've been conditioned to place on what activity really is. We got to grasp this. Have a look at your folks. Have a look at older generations. Like, are they rich? Are they abundant? Some, but not all. If working was an exclusive way to make money, if working was working hard, well, I know a lot of people that work hard. I used to work extremely hard. And then when I started to sit down and just recreate for even 30 minutes a day, my income went from $60,000 a month to 4 million. I went from 5,000. I went from $60,000 a year to $4.2 million a year. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, so talk to us. I know we're winding down here with our time, but when you just sit to visualize, is that enough, or do people need to be also taking action, thinking about what would a raspberry tree do, or who would a raspberry tree talk to?
No, no. What'll happen is as you sit, you will attract opportunities. And as I said earlier, it's not something for nothing, it's something for everything. So you'll attract awarenesses, you'll attract experiences, you'll attract people. And if you know anything about the universe has one modus operandi, and it's support and giving. That's its modus operandi. It supports all form of life, regardless of the nature of it. It still supports it. If it didn't, how did that guy in Maine shoot all those people? He was supported. Everything is supported, regardless of the nature. The universe is a supportive universe, so it'll support anything. So as we start to understand that, then we can start to lean in to that. As I visualize this, I will attract things. These ideas will start to support. I'll start to have opportunities to go serve. And that's where people fall down. They think they can have something for nothing, like Harry Potter coming through the mailbox. No, you have to serve. You have to follow the rules. There's rules in this place, and they're strict. They don't change.
Amazing. Well, hopefully, all of our listeners are feeling inspired to get still and connect to their goals and desires, and to really start to visualize and embody this work, because I think it's so important to recognize that we're not victims of life. You know, that can be such a draining mindset to
Vibration,
hold, and a
vibration.
waste of, yeah, and a waste of this beautiful life that we all get to live, and our contribution to life and in each other and this planet. Thank you, Dave, so much for being here and sharing your insights and your wisdoms. Where can people learn more about you and your work and stay connected?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Conway Consulting on Instagram, and I think it's in the bio. There is a 21-day manifestation challenge they can do. So if anybody's interested in, improving their focus and improving their capacity in creating mental pictures, I have a 21-day challenge that will start to help you do that. Very simple, and a lot of people are giving feedback about it, saying that their lives are changing. So it's a pretty beautiful thing.
Amazing. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to today's podcast episode around manifestation. I am so curious to hear what's landing and resonating for you. Do you believe in manifestation? Have you done manifestation before? Do you have your own manifestation practice? What is your relationship to manifestation? Join me on Instagram to continue the conversation. If you have a friend that would love to talk about manifestation, send this podcast episode along, because you never know who needs to hear the wisdom that was dropped here today. Thanks for being here, as always, and until next time, stay centered.